Hey, this is WVLP 103.1 FM, Valparaiso Community Radio. You can go to our website at www.wvlp.org and check out our programming. You are listening to Everyday Warriors, a show that highlights the heroes of every day. We don't do athletes, we don't do politics, we don't do music stars, we don't do movie stars. We do the real heroes of every day. Our public safety professionals, our police officers, our firefighters, EMS workers, frontline workers like emergency room nurses, our special educators, Special Olympics athletes and volunteers. Those are the real heroes of every day. I am your host, Danny McGuire. I am the program director at Calumet College of St. Joseph for public safety programs. I am also the owner and president of ADL Wellness Solutions and a therapy intern at the Center for New Pathways in Schaumburg, Illinois. Today, my guest is a financial crimes detective extraordinaire, city of Chicago, and we're going to call him Detective Marcus. Detective Marcus, thanks for coming.
Well, thank you, Dr. Danny McGuire.
Thanks, buddy. I don't know if the moniker of doctor is necessarily that important right now because I can't, if you fall out, I can't help you. I might be able to teach you to death, while your life is passing before your eyes. I might be able to bore you with statistics and things of that nature or useless facts, but I'm not curing diseases or anything, but I appreciate the props. Thank you. Marcus, in full disclosure, is probably one of my better students I've ever taught at Calumet College. He's a very professional individual, and it's my honor to have him on the show. He's also an adjunct professor. When he graduated from Calumet College with his Master's of Science in Public Safety Administration, he had expressed interest in wanting to teach. And I hired Marcus immediately because he is an incredible instructor and has great people skills, which makes him an incredible detective because that's a huge part of that job, isn't it?
It is. Talking to people. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, buddy.
No, I just wanted to say that, the one thing that I think that people seem to forget is detectives, just like police officers, we're people of the community, and we have to relate at a level, all kinds of levels. You have to be able to have a rapport with the worst guy, the best guy, and the guy in the middle.
100%. My only experience as a detective was a 90-day detail when I was making sergeant back then. The superintendent, Klein, had this system where you went to detective school first. You went to detective division for 90 days before you became sergeant. I think that the gist behind that was to teach you how to do investigations a little bit better, maybe report writing, because detectives are incredible report writers, incredible at doing investigations. They see things that people don't see. Patrol is the backbone of the police department, but the detectives, I believe, sometimes are the heart and soul. They really get things done when they need to be done. So I think that's incredible. So having that experience in a big city like Chicago, especially financial crimes, especially nowadays where it seems like most crimes that are significant revolve around some sort of financial thing. But before we get too far into that, I want you to introduce yourself to our audience, our listeners. Just give them a little bit of background about yourself, your service record, not only in the police department, but I'll let you tell that story, what you did before you're the police. And, well, it's all on you, Detective Marcus. Go ahead.
Well, good afternoon or morning or evening or whenever you're listening to this. I am a proud veteran of the United States Air Force. I served from 1988 to 1996. I was deployed for one war. I served in the capacity of a medic/physician assistant. And what my role was in the war was when it went from Desert Shield to Desert Storm, that cold month of January in 1991, I was on the flight line at Andrews Air Force Base. We were deployed we didn't know where we were going. We ended up in England, in Bicester, England. And what we did is we turned a school base, an old school, into a hospital. So we were on, for those who are old enough to remember MASH, that's what we did for 23 hours for the next 3 days. We went through medications that came in. We set up a pharmacy. We set up an ICU. We set up a surgical unit, and I initially started off working in ICU. Just for those who are familiar with the medical field, in a wartime situation, medics, doctors only do surgery. Nurses function as doctors. They release the patients. Um, Medics function as nurses, giving medications, knowing adverse reactions, and treating the individuals until they get back to the unit where they're going to be until they're transported back to the United States.
Thank you for your service, Marcus. That's significant. That's incredible. I knew you served in the Air Force, and I knew that you worked in some sort of medical capacity, but I never knew the extent of it. So I'm just I've been impressed with you since the day I met you, and I'm even more impressed with you now. How about your service on the police department? Give us a little background on that.
Okay, so I moved back to Chicago in 1995 from Charlotte, North Carolina, and I immediately got I immediately got back into medicine. I wasn't ready for the police department, so I came on in 2004, April of 2004. I've had the grand pleasure of, at 2.5 years, I got the opportunity to work for a deputy chief who's no longer around. He just he died. He died last year. His name was Everett Johnson. He gave me a chance, and I functioned as his timekeeper.
What a
But I
great
worked
man.
in
He was a great man.
great guy.
Great man. Great boss.
I've been incredibly lucky. I started off in the 11th district. I've been in the building 6 times in 18 years. I initially started off working patrol with some real characters. The Great Dirty Red, Sergio Gonzalez, I feel extraordinary, who taught me a lot of great values and taught me how to be the police from day one. I was incredibly lucky. And then I went to work for Everett. And from Everett, I worked for Trouble Buildings. I was his digs officer. And I worked for 2 more deputy chiefs. I worked for Gulliford, and then I worked for Eddie Johnson. And actually, I was back in the district at the time. I was working the 1106 car when Eddie came along. But since I worked for Wayne Gulliford and did his statistics at the time, and it was now Comstat, I was his Comstat guy till he could bring over the gentleman he wanted to work for him. So I've had the opportunity to learn the paperwork, learn the streets, work some good jobs. I then worked Trouble Buildings for 3.5 years. And then I went back to the great 11th district and worked the 1106 car. After that, I was lucky enough to land a spot in organized crime, where I worked in animal crimes, where we locked up convicted felons who weren't allowed to own dogs, animal abusers, and people who did dog fights.
Wow. Wow. I
So
mean, it's incredible. I love it. I love
yeah,
hearing it.
so then I came back to the 11th district and I worked in community policing, and I was able to be the trouble business officer. And one of the things that we did while I was there that we received a reward, received an award for, is we started a cotillion to teach the community children who don't get the opportunity to learn things from outside their neighborhood, how to eat, how to dance, how to be professional, how to court a woman at a dance, only for dance purposes. And after that, I was lucky enough to make detective, and I was initially put in Area South, which was a new world for me because I'm a West Sider. And I worked on midnight, so I worked SVU, RBT, and I'll tell you what the acronyms mean for those who aren't aware. SVU.
Yes, for our listeners, you have to, clarify, what those acronym means. And also, like, I took a note here, like, I know what an 1106 car is, but maybe they don't. So I'll tell you that right after I tell you the acronyms. SVU is Special Victims. I'm sure everybody's seen it on Law and Order. Special Victims specializes in domestics and children-related crimes, even though we do have a special unit for children, SIU, which is Special Investigations Unit, and they handle most of the sexual predatory crimes in that area. RBT is robbery, burglary, and theft, or property crimes. They handle all those things that I just mentioned, a robbery, a burglary, or a theft. And then I work violent crimes, which is where I was initially assigned to. But on midnight, you handle everything till days.
is anybody who's shot or when there's a homicide.
Awesome. That incredible experience. Incredible experience. Our listeners are lucky to have you on the show, talk about your experience and what it's like to do these things. I mean, incredible. Going back to Everett Johnson, I remember there was a Chicago Police weightlifting club. My dad and I were members of it, and he would be in there weightlifting all of the time. Just an interesting guy, very interesting, good man, and all those bosses you named, Wayne and the rest of them, all good people. So your experience is vast and great, and we're going to talk about it today. Some of it. What interests me right now is talking about the financial crimes. What is it like to be a financial crimes detective in a place like Chicago? How busy are you? What do the crimes look like? What is the majority of the crimes you face and see every day? What are those things? What are you investigating?
Okay. Well, before I get into that, I'll simply give you a brief description of 1106. So, 1106 is now the special teams that they have in the district that handle all the emergencies. But back then, when I was on 1106 car, it was the go-to car. If there was a problem in the district, the commander would call you personally on your cell phone and tell you, go handle this sex crime, go handle this homicide problem, do the investigations with the detectives, and keep him up to date so that there's firsthand knowledge to the commander so that he can relate the information to all of the people that report to him directly. The watch commander, who is usually a lieutenant or a captain at the time, and all the sergeants, so that all of the information that's coming from the investigation is getting to him firsthand. He knows who the players are. It was very, it was like, it was a blessing, but it was a very important position that I took serious.
Well, it sounds like a serious position. I mean, you're answering to the commander of a district, and for our listeners, in a place like Chicago Police Department, the commander is like his own chief of police of his area. He or she runs that entire area. So if you're the commander of, let's say, the 11th district, you are the chief of the 11th district. Do you have higher ups to answer to? Yes, but on a day-to-day basis, you are the person in charge. So that is a pretty significant position to have to make notifications to that commander working with detectives if there's a major crime. So that's a pretty significant thing. So thanks for explaining that. Now, going back to the financial crimes aspect, what, daily basis, what's your garden variety day like on the Chicago Police Department? And I know there's no garden variety, right? What is it like to be a financial crimes detective in the city of Chicago?
So I have 3 years of experience in April in financial crimes, and we have a caveat of everything. First thing, let me say this before I got there. We had the numbers. The numbers were about 30,000 cases pre-COVID. But as you
30,000
cases
pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID.
How many detectives are there? How many financial crime detectives are there?
Well, we've had a lot of promotions. We had a lot of retirements this week or just this month. So now we're down to, I know that we have 3 pre-sergeant selectives that scored less than 100. And they should be going into a class sometime in between February and March, or the first 3 months of the year. And then after that, we have eight field detectives, 4 case management detectives. And I know that sounds uneven, because why would you have 4 people sifting through cases? Because when you got 60,000 cases, they have to determine the cases that are workable. They have to, sometimes they even collect details and evidence for the investigation prior to giving it to us. And they're pretty much the backbone of what we do. And then we have 3 detectives that are TFOs. Currently we have really more than that. We have 4 detectives assigned to the Secret Service, and 2 to the FBI. And we're supposed to be working up a team for the Department of Homeland Security.
All right. So you said a lot there. And I just want to clarify what I'm hearing for our listeners. So you said 60,000 cases, and there's four case managing detectives. So if my numbers are correct, that's 15,000 per detective to sift through and see if it's worthy of actually being investigated by a detective. Is that what you're saying?
Sort of, kind of. So what
Sort of,
happens?
kind of. Okay.
So what happens is with these four detectives, we have multiple UCRs, and UCRs are uniform codes that the FBI uses to detail what kind of crime it is. And so what they do is, I don't know if they rotate it weekly or monthly, but back in the office, there's, like 11:30 is a deceptive practice, fraud and confidence game, which is our fit all for everything. So if someone old or someone young was called and they say that they're from the IRS or the FBI, and if you send me target cards and give me the codes in the value of $5,000, I'm not going to come arrest you and send you back to your country. And people do this all the time. But there's 11:30s, 11:50s, 11:40s, and what they do is they break the codes down and they handle certain codes. So even though we get jobs routinely, you might get a job from two different CMO officers on the same day, just because they came from different classifications.
Hmm.
They do their best to clear the box. The other thing is, we always tell our victims is, give us 5 to 7 days to get the job out to a detective to get back in touch with you, just because we're usually that busy.
Yeah. Well, um, that's pretty significant. So what's when you say this is our catch-all, you had said that fraud and confidence game or something along those lines, that's your catch-all. What do you mean by that?
Well, the thing is this, that most people that get financially fixed are usually fixed on doing something different. We've had cases where there are people that call us and say that they were on a dating website or a sex website, and they gave information to the individual on the other line that they shouldn't have.
Okay.
Maybe it was credit card information, and they stole their identity and began to use the credit card illegally. Maybe maybe they thought they were going to get a $400 Oric vacuum cleaner for $79, because that's what it said on the internet. But the internet website is now shut down, whether it be by the Attorney General or by the FBI or another federal bureau or a federal agency. And so what we do is, because we don't have a lot of information on how they did it, but just the fact that they promised something that they couldn't give them, that's a
Mhm.
fraud or confidence game.
Wow. So going back to something you said earlier, you said 60,000 cases. That's currently what you're doing, 60,000. And if I heard you correctly, there's 8 detectives. Now I get it that, it's no fault of your own or the supervisor or anything. It's the cards were dealt with, not having the manpower on the city of Chicago Police Department to fill these positions, plus promotions and things like that. I completely get it. It's just a dynamic that, in my time when I became a police officer, there's always manpower issues in different places, but it seems a little bit more significant now from the people I talk to. Sounds like there's, significant manpower issues. So I fully understand that, and no fault of your own. So 8 detectives for 60,000 cases.
And
And how,
in
and
March, we have about 12 now.
no, you have 12 detectives. Okay. So how many of these cases go in and, you investigate them and you end up prosecuting somebody? You end up getting, a warrant, whatever, arresting somebody and taking them to jail and prosecuting. How many would you say?
Okay, so I'm probably one of the busier detectives since I've been there. I do a lot of in custodies. And again, this was pre-COVID, because we were able to go into the stores, Bloomingdale's, Macy's, wherever they used someone else's credit card or stole someone else's identity and opened up an account, and we were able to take them into custody. Now what we do, so our process is this. Just so everyone out there can be patient with whatever police department you're dealing with. We get the case. We contact the victim immediately, which would be you, the listener. We ask you. We kind of give you a brief. We give you a briefing of what they wrote on a brief already summarized, completed general offense case report or police report, wherever you're from, and we make sure that the information is true and accurate. At this time, we can now amend the report and add any substantial information so that the investigation can be either handled properly or suspended immediately. The one thing that we can't do, and I tell all my victims this, if you've given someone, I had a case the other day, I'll give you a real example. Young lady, 62 years young, gave her daughter her credit card number to take an Uber ride. She then didn't use the card for a while, but because the mama gave the credit card number to the daughter then decided to use the credit card again for more Uber rides. Well, the state's attorney, the great Kim Fox, and the people that file these cases against the offenders that we have, what they tend to do is, if there's information documented in the case report where the individual who was the victim gave the information to the person, depending on the amount, usually of lower amounts like this, and I think this case was somewhere between $90 and $100, the state won't even prosecute it. So it means that if I find the daughter, the only way that first of all, that I can lock the daughter up is if she said, yeah, I used the card without authorization. What are you going to do? Now I got to go get her. But
Right.
if she says that I didn't use it without authorization, my mom is and I are in an argument, or we're having a family tussle, there's really nothing I can do on that case except call the victim or call the offender or the person of interest and see if she's willing to give me enough to arrest her. If she doesn't, then I have to suspend the case indefinitely, and or ask the mother, because she knows who the offender is she willing to allow me to close it, close it exceptional, because she's not willing to prosecute her daughter at this point.
Wow. There's got to be a level of frustration that comes with that. Am I right?
There is, but again, you have to realize that who would have ever thought that your daughter would have taken your credit card and used it on her own free will?
Right.
So I mean, we spend more time talking to our victims and bringing them down because they're very upset,
mm-hmm.
and telling them what they can do to protect themselves, because there are things that you can do to protect yourself.
Wow. So what are some of those things you can do to protect yourself?
Well, the first thing that I recommend, I also, I have the pleasure of teaching the Financial Crimes and Investigation Management course at Calumet College. So the first thing that I tell all my students is this: don't buy LifeLock. LifeLock, I mean, unless you really feel that it does something better than some of these free apps out here, Credit Karma and Credit Sesame will always identify you when someone does a hard inquiry on your credit. And that's what LifeLock does. And sometimes, because LifeLock is so busy, they don't get back to you till a few days later. But those are two things that you can do. The other thing that I tell them, and I tell everyone this, and please be mindful that I'm not being mean about it, but it's not are you going to be a victim? It's when all your information is out there. Every time there's a breach, and the newest breach just happened today. I got an alert on my phone. 515,000 people's personal information was breached by the Red Cross today. Macy's, Target, all these breaches have all your pertinent information. The one thing that we have to know as a consumer is that when we sign or we do an electronic form to get a credit card, in that little writing that we never read with the where you need a microscope to read, it
mm-hmm.
always says that you give the right or the benefit to the creditor to disperse your information as they best seem it fit and pleased.
Wait a minute. So that when you sign a credit card application, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, you give them the right to disseminate some of your information to their fellow creditors.
Wow. You said something earlier too, that you said the app of Credit Karma, and what was the other app that you could use?
Credit Sesame, SESAME.
Okay, so Credit Sesame and Credit Karma are free apps that you can use that do the same thing as LifeLock.
Exactly.
Okay, and then you said, when are you going to be a victim? Not if, but when.
Right.
So tell tell me a little bit more about that. So you're saying that your
So,
information's out there.
well, the other thing is, people are hacking computers. Um, I mean, Amazon's big business, right? But anyone that has Amazon Prime, don't you have a card on file?
Yes. Yes, you do.
So someone hacks your account. They get in, they start ordering things, they look abnormal, they go to a different address, and Amazon calls you or sends you a text and says, did you order this? Or if someone is lazy that day, if it's a Monday or a Friday, like a Monday or Friday car, and if you get a few parts and a few screws, they just send it out. And then you get this bill, and then you're like, well, where did this come from? A lot of it is complacency of the people in the industries. People aren't double checking or double crossing. And the thing is, the one good thing about Amazon is when your order is filled, and if someone is taking over your personal email account, not only will you not get the registry on your Amazon, but you won't even get the email. What you'll get is the bill on whatever card you've set up to have your charges sent to, whether it be a debit card or a Visa card. So one of the things that I also tell my students is this, that if you have a bank account, open a separate account or open up a separate credit card specifically for these kinds of charges so that your damages are a whole lot less. So what most criminals do is when they find it, they share it with their other friends, and not only their friends locally, but all around the country and the world, as well as the stuff that you can ascertain on the dark web. For those who don't know about the dark web or the onion, this was something that was developed by the United States Navy some years ago to monitor unlawful sales of everything. I mean, on the dark web, as you know, because you taught the info security class to me, on the dark web, you can buy anything from a body part to a hire for murder to car parts that don't exist. You don't think, like DeLorean parts, to information about people. You can buy credit card numbers in the hundreds, in the thousands, in the millions if you want, because that kind of information lives there.
Wow. That's pretty significant. It's like drinking from a fire hydrant. I'm not going to lie to you right now. I'm like just blown away by the information here. And it's interesting when you say not if, but when it's going to happen. Having all of this out there. I mean, it happened to me twice. I was one time I was in Galena, Illinois, with my family, and I went to put something on a debit card, and it kicked back not sufficient funds. So I went up on the computer and I saw all these crazy charges. So then I set up my debit card so I would have immediate notifications when something was spent. I did, you get the money back. I got the money back, but it was a while, while they investigated. And then it happened again on one of my credit cards. Someone got the credit card number and went crazy buying stuff. Again, it was taken care of, but it took a significant amount of time. And I don't think anyone was ever prosecuted. How often do these things get prosecuted? Things like that.
So, so most of our cases they're given deals, just like with a drug case or narcotic case in Cook County. The first time is on the government. They usually put you on probation. But I've had people who have violated the law multiple times. I've proven it in court, and they were given double high security probation, I guess it's called, because
Double secret probation. Double secret probation. I think that was in
yeah.
a movie.
So I had a guy who he ascertained the business. He did business with an auto store, and he bought an engine, and he wrote a check, and the check was refused, and then they handed him check back, or his bank handed him the information, and it had their routing number and their account number. So he called the check company, told me he was a representative, wanted his name on it, not the business name, and he used the same account and routing number and started writing checks. He used the checks mostly at the post office. That's when I locked him up, and when he ordered magazines for home. But
He ordered the magazines to his own house.
he did. He
Yeah.
did.
I mean, sounds like a genius. I mean, you're going to break the law and send the proceeds of your criminal action to your home. I mean, that's wow. Well,
And
thank God for that. Cause then, it's easy for you, right? It's one case down out of your $60,000.
Well, so to tell you more about my cases, so what I do is, and let me say this, my partner from when I first got to financial crimes almost 3 years ago, she actually retired at 44 with 20 years and 3 weeks on the job. She moved to Texas, and she's doing well. But I took on her jobs too, and so I volunteered to take on her jobs because I already knew some of the players. We discussed some of the subject matter, and it would be so hard to go in depth on an embezzlement or something else that's illegal credit card usage when I already knew the story. But one of the things that I wanted to say um, in reference to what you said about your charges,
Mhm.
always, please, always, when you travel, use a credit card. Why do you think I said that, Dr. Danny?
Because you don't want them having access to your personal account information. You rather have them use the credit card because the credit cards are probably insured.
That is exactly that. The insured is exactly the reason why I said it. Because if you use a debit card, who loses the money? Your
I
bank
do.
account.
Right. Bank
If
account.
it's a credit card, it's Chase, it's Bank of America, it's Liberty Bank, it's whoever it may be. So what I tell people is this, and I'm going to give a plug here, which I'm not supposed to, but I think the best bank that we deal with when we have fraud is American Express. So if your credit's good, go get the card. They um, not only do they do the legwork for you, they actually call the customers, and most of their customers actually call our department even if they're out of state to press charges, because it's not so much that the money that they took, but it's the fact that someone had the nerve and the audacity and the gall to do this to them. And my thing is this: if I had a case that was just publicized in CWB maybe 3 months ago, November.
What's
People were in
CWB? CWB.
CWB is the Chicago online paper that tells about police work and what we're doing and some of the success stories.
Where can someone access that in case they want to look at it?
I think it's cwbchicago.com.
Okay, cool.
And so I had a guy who got caught up, and he was only arrested because he was urinating on the public way. And so he had 15 credit cards in his pocket. And we found out that he was going to, I can't say much because it's still in litigation, but he was going to a local bar and he was taking the credit cards. And we called American Express, and there were 5 victims, and they all called back. And the one thing is when you have 15 victims, and most of the detectives are willing to help you. So I had someone that went out with me, and then I had a partner who just became a sergeant. So what we did is we divided the victims into 5, and we called, we Accurant their information. And Accurant, or LexisNexis, is a database that the police pays for, that everyone's on. If you receive mail, get a check, been employed, been unemployed, you're in this database. And what we do is it's really hard to find like common names like Danny McGuire. I would be strung up on. But if your name is Osvaldo Chinga Changa Thomas, there's probably only 1 or 2 of you in the world. And we look locally first, and then we look nationally. We don't do too much international investigations. But you find this individual, you call them, or if you don't have a telephone number, you can call the local jurisdiction and tell them that you have their credit card. You have their credit card in your possession, and or the number, and do they want to press charges? And if we get 3 or more, it usually moves up from a class 4 to a class 3 felony.
Wow. That's incredible. This is really informational, and I think our listeners will really appreciate all of this information. I have to break for station identification, Marcus. So this is WVLP, Valparaiso Community Radio. You can find us at wvlp.org for our programming, and you are listening to Everyday Warriors with your host, Danny McGuire. And our guest today is Detective Marcus from the Chicago Police Department. He is Detective of Financial Crimes. And he is talking about some interesting topics that are just mind blowing. I mean, this is really incredible. So What's the craziest financial crime you've seen?
Well,
Or the most interesting? I don't know. The craziest, most interesting, weirdest, whatever.
um, wow. There's so many. I mean, I'm handling some big cases now, but uh, I have a case where an individual of power within the state, she has a state job and of title, um, is financial exploitation of an elderly. I mean, she entered a relationship with him, and then she started embezzling money from his company when he gave her rights to use his account for business. She started depositing money into her personal account, and oh no, I have one even worse than that. And so, which I can talk about, but but um, but
Well,
but she's
now that you've teased our listeners about the one that's even worse than this, I mean, my jaw is open. Like you're telling me this person has some sort of significant role in government, and they're they're embezzling money from their boyfriend they entered, or whatever, their partner they entered into a relationship with, and you're like, oh, I have one worse than that. And our listeners are probably, particularly my mom, who's probably listening. Hi, Mom. I know you're listening. She's probably, well, what's the case? I know she's going to ask. So,
okay.
between her and my sister, probably. So go ahead, continue. I apologize.
That's all right. So an elderly lady calls me, and her home health keeper keeps calls me, um, and they tell me that all of her cars have been changed into the name of the person of interest or the offender. And in those cars is a Rolls Royce, an RV, and a few passenger cars, as well as she's already lost a civil lawsuit with them, which is really bad because
This is the
her,
boyfriend girlfriend thing still.
this is a different boyfriend
Oh,
girlfriend.
this is a different one. Okay. All right.
So, well, first let's say this: the lady who called me is she's a widower,
Okay.
and her husband, they were very wealthy. They owned a few nursing homes and they owned the cleaners, and
Okay.
so she brought this young man who was a pastor onto her payroll to control her financial interests because she wasn't always aware of what was going on. And I think that he worked with the husband, and so he took control of all of her property. He quit claim deed everything to himself. He took over a nursing home for $100. He quit claim deed it, and he was so stupid. He didn't even get a different notary. He notarized it, which makes it invalid.
Right.
But he took over a nursing home, which they lost in civil court. So for those who don't know, criminal court is where you go to jail. Civil court is where you try to recoup monies from people who actually have it. And the burden of proof in civil court is much less than it is in criminal court.
Wow. Well, yeah, the burden of proof in a civil case is um the criminal is beyond reasonable doubt, and preponderance of the evidence is in a civil case. So some of our listeners might not be familiar with that. So if you want to explain that, that'd be great. So beyond a reasonable
Yes.
doubt is beyond a reasonable doubt, and preponderance of evidence means what? It's more likely that they did it than didn't do it, right?
So at the end of the day, with all the things that he took from this lady, um, he took about $7 million in valuables.
$7 million.
$7 million.
Wow.
And so I kept talking to her and her healthcare keeper or whatever she was. She was like more than a nanny. She was over there all the time. And of course, I went out there and I visited the property and see if she could give me some paperwork, and she didn't have it all. And the horrible thing that happened was that she died. And because
Okay.
she died, um, the family would now have to civilly sue her for any valuables because she was the victim and she no longer lived. The other horrible thing is I found out that and I called the pastor and told him I wanted to talk to him, and he said, "Yeah, well, my lawyer will get all my numbers to you," and I never heard from him again. But he ran for mayor in Texas and almost won, lost by 35 votes.
The guy who basically robbed from this woman.
Right. and yeah, and then
Good gravy.
and
Good
then he
gravy.
and then he turned around and got locked up for a financial crime in Texas. And I think he actually is about to go to jail. I haven't looked up on the case lately, but in Texas,
You said he's a
don't mess with
pastor.
Texas.
He's a pastor.
Yeah, he's a pastor.
Uh, I, you know, well, that's a topic for another. You and I, you're gonna have to be interviewed again, and we're gonna have to talk about something along those lines. I think that's a different show. Someone will say to me, when you're in an educational position now, as we know each other pretty well. So I've shared these stories in class or in faculty meetings, and you'll get pressed by people about, police corruption and stuff. And I go, do you understand what the rate of corruption is in law enforcement? Yeah. If we had to quantify it, right, put a number on it, it's like less than 0.1%.
Right.
And there's other occupations out there that the corruption level is much higher than that. It's 25-30%. So when you say this man's a pastor, I immediately, because I practice my faith, I'm Catholic, and I practice my faith. I try to live my life at a certain standard. Nobody's perfect, by any stretch of the imagination. And we try to separate the deed from the doer when someone does something. But really, I think you should be the example of what righteousness and goodness should be, right? So God, I don't even know what to say. But I'm not surprised. My experience, if I didn't have the experience I had, Marcus, I'd be completely floored. But I'm not surprised. I'm just disappointed, I guess. Disappointed because this man or person probably had cultivated a bunch of people in his life or mentored people, and now well, anyways, I digress. Let's go back to Marcus.
Let me give them a better story. I have a good story. I just worked on.
Give us a success here. Give us a touchdown, will you, please?
Okay. So I was contacted. I had a retired lieutenant who had a quitclaim deed set against his property. He's 83 years old. He's on dialysis, so his, and the worry is that with the quitclaim deed, for those who don't know, if you don't have a living trust and you just have a will, and someone wants to probate your property or your belongings, they can and take all of your.
That's home title theft. Is that what that is?
No. Well, it was even. We thought it was. We thought it was that, but it turns out to be not so bad. So I get this case. I call him. He doesn't return my call. I call him back about 4 days later, and we talk for about a real established guy, really jovial guy, real decent. Just upset about the fact that there's a quitclaim on. So for those who don't know that live in Cook County, I don't know what Valparaiso does. Valparaiso. What they do is in Cook County with the recorder of deeds, if you have a property, you can register that property on the recorder of deeds for fraud alert, which means that anyone that files a mechanics lien, and a mechanics lien is you hire a painter, you don't pay him, he puts a lien against your house, which means you can't sell. Quitclaim deed is the same way. Anyone that the quitclaim deed goes to is now part of the deal, meaning that if the house is still being financed, if the person who has the quitclaim deed against the house isn't notified for the deal, for the closing, well, the house can't go through the end sale because it's co-owned by the person with that deed as well as the owner of the financial responsibility. Wow. So with this man, he's on dialysis. With COVID, we've learned nobody's promised tomorrow. I call him and I reach out to him and I make an appointment to go see him the following day. I go see him. He shows me all his paperwork. Being that he was in law enforcement, I show, and he's my victim. I show him all my paperwork, and he's kind of wild on some of the stuff that I pulled off the internet. And shows me letters because he had to hire a lawyer to have this quitclaim removed, and of course it hadn't been. And again, now we talk about just error and situation. So the next day, or that evening before I go home, I leave a message for the fraud investigators for the Cook County Recorder of Deeds. And being the kind of zealous guy that I can be, as you know, as my instructor. You give me homework and I want to finish it in a half an hour. I I go directly I go directly to the Cook County Recorder of Deeds at City Hall the following day at 10 o'clock in the morning. I think that if I give them an hour to open up and start the business, they'll be ready for me because I'm a little bit animated sometimes. So I walk in.
You are animated sometimes. You get very animated, and I love it when you do.
So I walk into the Cook County Recorder of Deeds office, and they have security and they have a Cook County officer controlling the flow of people because of COVID. You know, not too many. You go here, you go there. So the Cook County Sheriff, I walk in in plain clothes with a bulletproof vest on, with a Eddie Bauer jacket that says Chicago Police on it, with a file in my hand. And the man says to me, "Sir, if you got a civil case, you need to step to the right." I said, "Sir, I'm in uniform and this is a criminal case and I need to speak to the recorder of the deeds or the fraud investigator." And he says to me, "Oh, okay. And so they sit me down outside an office, and I go in and I meet the gentleman, and he is the most kind and gracious man. He's the deputy director, deputy direct recorder of deeds for Cook County.
Okay.
And I share my information with him because, as you know, and as the listeners should know, that as police officers, the only way that you can get documents around from a police case is be a police officer or request a FOIA. FOIA is a Freedom of Information Act, and I promise you, it's not going to be what you think it is because it's redacted. Meaning there's so many black marks on there, you really don't even have a complete story. So law enforcement is only able to share information with other law enforcement agencies that are conducting part of the investigation. So I give him what I have. He forwards it to his investigator. And less than 15 minutes later, after I walk out, 5 minutes later, the legal counsel for the Cook County Recorder of Cook County calls me, and he tells me that he's going to handle the problem. He said, "I'm glad that you did it. The victim actually put us on this some time ago, because what happened is the property is on property that IIT owns. And IIT, when he bought the property, they gave them all 100-year free levy of taxes on that property. And so that if you bought property and it wasn't the common grounds, you could still sell the property without having to go through IIT. IIT is now having some financial problems. And so people in Korea and China are now buying up some of the bonds and the land in the city of Chicago. And so what they did is it was an error. It was a pin error. And what you'll notice is when you buy property, you have a 16 pin number. And these pin numbers didn't match. And I already thought that was kind of crazy. But when I called the legal counsel, he said over 260 properties had quitclaim deeds against them by this couple that lived in Palatine at one time and now live in Korea on error. And all they had to do is, for $98, is go on the internet and claim that was their property.
Wow.
For $100. And so almost immediately they wiped the quitclaim deed off of his property. And he now is in a position, whereas if he wanted to sell the property, or if he went into a nursing home and was forced to sell it, he could now do it without any legal issues.
Wow. Well, I mean, that's a great ending for him, but I'm fascinated at how deep this goes. I mean, the stuff that gets flown right under our nose, so to speak, is incredible. Again, I'm in shock. I'm not surprised, but because people will do we know this from our experience. You worked in 11. In my assignments, I spend time on the west side and the south side and all that stuff. And I know that people will do some pretty terrible things to each other, right? Whether, it's physical or mental or whatever. So I'm not surprised by it, but I am shocked by the depth that it goes and how easy it seems almost. These people live in Palatine. They make calls and say, "This is our property." Oh, okay. All right. No problem. I
Well,
mean, that's something.
well, the other thing is they didn't even do it from Palatine because they were backing in Korea because the notaries were sent from the embassy.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah.
It's frightening. It's frightening.
Well, well, they cleared 260 cases with this case,
That case cleared 260 cases.
right? Because the pin indexing was done on every property in that housing complex on that block.
Let me tell you something, Marcus. You keep talking about this stuff, and Mom McGuire is going to be inviting you over for pasta, you know, and wanting to get all this information from me. I'll tell you that right now because she's going to be all over this.
Okay. Well, let's
Uh,
let's do Mama McGuire some justice. Let's give her some tips and the listeners some tips on things that they can do besides credit cards.
Sounds
Make sure
great.
first thing I always recommend is that you do your one free report every year. And I think you can pull that up on annualreport.com. It's free. Um, it'll 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 um it'll tell you where you can go. Another thing is if you become a victim of a financial crime, no matter who you bank with, no matter what the cause is, always get a police report. You not getting a police report allows the bank not to allows them not to investigate it. They won't give you a fraud investigation if you don't have um, a police report from your local jurisdiction. And the other thing is, and this is one of the things that we talk about even in our introductory class with the police officers, is that if you're the victim of a financial crime and you have a local jurisdiction to freeze your credit by simply going on ftc.gov/identity theft and the people at the Federal Trade Commission, because that's what FTC stands for, are really, really good at helping people. They've been incredibly busy, but most of this stuff you can do online. They have templates of forms that you would need for your credit cards and your creditors, and it just makes things a whole lot easier at the end of the day. Do you have any questions, Danny?
I don't have any questions, but I can tell you that our listeners probably have hundreds of questions. One thing I wanted to say to Marcus was thank you for your service, both on the Chicago Police Department, United States Air Force. Thank you for your service to Calumet College. You're an incredible instructor. I always get positive reviews from students, and sharing your knowledge is incredible. And also, thank you to your son for his service. Marcus' son's in what branch of the service? I'm sorry.
He's in the Army. He's actually deployed to Korea right now for a second shot.
Okay. So thank you for his service. Thank him for his service, and hopefully he's safe and well and comes home in one piece. Thank you, Marcus. So if someone wanted to get a hold of you to talk to you, what would be the best way to get a hold of you?
Best way is probably through my email, and I'll give you my. Should I make it? Which one do you think I should use?
I always go with the professional email. It's probably the best,
Okay.
whether it's the college or I mean, if you don't want to cloud up your police department email, maybe the college one is better. Or if you have a personal one that you want to give out that you use for different things. I have several email addresses,
I do
and
too.
yeah, one of them is just for this show.
Okay. Well, we'll give them the no matter which one I give you, it comes directly to my phone. I actually answer it faster than I answer my phone calls sometimes because I'm on other lines. But it's M as in Mary, Shepherd, S as in Sam, H as in Howard, E as in Edward, P as in Paul, A as in Adam, R as in Robert, D as in David, the number one at CC, that's C as in Charlie, C as in Charlie, S as in Sam, and J as in James, .edu. And if you have any questions or there's something that you need me to just make a little bit clearer for you, feel free to reach out to me, and I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can.
One last question for you, Marcus, and if you want to talk about it, that'd be great. You do a little bit of work for the Holocaust Museum. Is that correct? So you want to talk about that for a little bit? We've got about 4 minutes left, so go ahead.
Okay. So what we do at the Holocaust Museum, and I'm a consultant there, one of the students at Calumet, like the lesson that he got in school and got me this interview. So what we do is there's two sets of classes. One we do like open, we try to use the history of the Battalion 101, which were the police officers that were converted to do military assignments by Hitler. We talk about the things that they did, what the repercussions were from what they did, and we talk about some of the similarities in policing because we try to learn from history. The other class that I teach and I just taught was the leadership class, and that was for 100 new sergeants and 45 new lieutenants. And we try to remind them. The one thing is that in police work, we tend to sometimes get complacent or use yesterday's example on today's plan, and we try to bring people back down so that they can reset themselves ethically and morally to treat each person as an individual when you're dealing with them, whether they're a new recruit or whether they're an experienced vet. Because sometimes we get people in our leadership class that are supervisors that have been in the detective division for 20 years. We even get police officers that have been detectives and have made sergeant that have been detectives for 18 or 22 years. And we have to remind them of how in the Holocaust, how the Germans came into an area where they knew nothing about these people, but that they didn't like them. And that wasn't fair to the Jewish people back then. And we try to remind them that we want to be fair and equitable in all the decisions that we do as police officers, because the power of that uniform is grand. I mean, regardless of whether you like the police or not, when blue lights creep up behind you and they go on, even when they go on behind me, it's like, uh-oh, what did I do now? And so we have to remember that we're people just as the people that we're stopping are human beings and have some sense of humanity. But when we talk about the Holocaust, we even have survivors, and they tell their stories of how they felt when they saw the police.
Wow, that's incredible. So for our listeners that are interested, where can they find information about the Holocaust Museum?
Just Google Illinois Holocaust Museum. It's at 9603 Woods Street in Skokie, Illinois. And if you've never been, you should check it out. It's a plethora of knowledge. Actually, right now they always have other things going on there. They had a Mandela set up, and now they have something for the LGBTQ community. So you can always check it out online too.
That's great. Thanks, Marcus. Ladies and gentlemen, listeners, Detective Marcus, thank you for all the information. We're going to have you on again if you're available down the road. That would be great. Your experience and your knowledge is incredible, as well as your ability to articulate things. I always thought that of you when you were a student. That was great. So this is Everyday Warriors, and Everyday Warriors is about everyday heroes. I said it in the beginning, in the opening, and I'll say it again. We don't do politics. We don't do politicians. We don't do athletes. We don't do movie stars. We don't do music artists. We do the real heroes of every day. And the real heroes are our public safety professionals, our police officers, our firefighters, our EMS workers, frontline workers, our special educators, our Special Olympics athletes and volunteers. These are real heroes of every day. These are people that make the world go round. I once heard on a talk radio show on the way into work one day in Chicago, a gentleman said, and he was from one of the inner city organizations that helped with gangs and gang members. And he said, if you can't look across your table for a hero or in your own home, we have bigger problems than we can help you with. So I think of that often. And that was a significant amount of time ago. I mean, it was over like 11 years ago. He said that. And I often think about that. And Detective Marcus, you are one of today's real heroes, without a doubt. So ladies and gentlemen, this is WVLP, Valparaiso Community Radio. You can find us at our website, wvlp.org, for our programming. This is Everyday Warriors, and I am Dr. Danny McGuire from Calumet College of St. Joseph, president and owner of ADL Wellness Solutions and therapy intern at the Center for New Pathways in Schaumburg. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you next week.